Imagine a system that takes the complete illusion of recycling and replaces it with a hard, traceable loop. We are talking about rewiring how an entire nation handles mountains of waste. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive into India's Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules of 2026. And trust me, we aren't just looking at some standard environmental policy here. This is a massive economic and governance overhaul. So let's just jump right into it. What actually happens to the plastic we throw away right now? For decades, the answer has honestly been a pretty murky mix of overflowing landfills, polluted oceans, and those invisible microplastics that are literally infiltrating our water systems. This invisible crisis, combined with just incredibly weak enforcement, is exactly what triggered the need for a massive governance upgrade. The problem wasn't just pollution anymore, it was a severe lack of accountability. Enter the Ministry of Environment, Forest, and Climate Change. Their official 2026 amendment, which kicks in on March 31st, 2026, isn't just your basic set of rules or some minor tweak to the old 2016 and 2022 guidelines. Think of it more like a comprehensive software upgrade to India's entire environmental machinery. It's a really rapid, aggressive attempt to enforce discipline on an industry that, let's be real, has historically thrived on zero accountability. To really wrap our heads around this, we first need to understand the underlying mental model. The fundamental motive driving every single new mandate here is the shift toward a circular economy. We're completely moving away from that old linear take, make, dispose model. The goal now is to transform waste from a toxic dead end into a continuous, valuable resource. We want to sharply reduce our dependence on producing brand new, virgin plastic. Now that we've got the why down, let's map out the architecture of this whole system. We're going to break down the core mandates, explore the new digital traceability mechanics, critically test the system's loopholes, and then lock in the core takeaways. Let's start with the new hardware of the system. We're looking at strict, graded targets designed to basically force industries to adapt. And just to be clear, these aren't suggestions anymore. These are strict legal obligations. This setup brilliantly illustrates what I like to call the progressive escalator effect, built right into the policy. Take a category I, for example, which covers rigid plastic packaging like your standard beverage bottles. In the 2025 to 2026 financial year, manufacturers are legally forced to ensure 30% of their packaging is made from recycled materials. But watch the trajectory here. By 2028 to 29, that number literally doubles to 60%. It's a deliberate squeeze. It forces a massive market demand for recycled plastics. And get this, large brand owners will even face reuse targets as high as 85% for specific large format packaging. But the regulators aren't completely blind to material realities. Notice how the regulatory pressure actually adapts to the complexity of the material itself. Flexible plastics, like your everyday grocery bags, start at a 10% target and rise to 20%. And then you have multi-layered plastics. Think of those shiny potato chip wrappers that are famously a nightmare to recycle. They start at just 5%, rising to 10%. So yes, the targets are definitely lower, but they are now non-negotiable mandatory benchmarks. Here's the catch, though. You absolutely cannot hit those manufacturing targets without a clean supply of waste. So to feed this massive recycling machinery correctly, the rules mandate a strict 4-stream segregation right at the source. We are talking wet waste for composting, dry waste for material recovery facilities, securely wrapped sanitary waste, and designated drop-offs for special care waste, like paint cans and medicines. This fundamentally shifts the burden and requires a massive change in both everyday citizen behavior and municipal infrastructure. Now, setting all these ambitious targets is one thing, right? But how do you actually enforce them across such a massive economy? Well, the real transformation happens through digital traceability and strict accountability mechanics. Notice the introduction of digital governance into waste management here. Think of this as the digital backbone of the new rules. Every single piece of plastic packaging must now carry a traceable QR code or barcode. This is a game changer because it empowers both regulators and everyday consumers to instantly verify exactly where the plastic came from, its percentage of recycled content, and whether the producer is legally registered. The net is definitely widening, too. A newly defined category of sellers, meaning anyone dealing in raw plastic resins and pellets, must now officially register and report annually. And to eliminate that sketchy paper-only compliance we've seen in the past, independent registered environmental auditors will now go in and physically verify these companies' recycling claims. What if a company violates the rules? The polluter pays principle kicks right in, slapping them with environmental compensation fines ranging from 10,000 all the way up to a massive 15 lakh rupees. The policy does account for some practical limitations, though. Sensitive sectors like medical supplies and food contact packaging, governed by the FSSAI, naturally get logical exceptions from using recycled plastics due to safety risks. But the rules don't let non-recyclable waste off the hook. They provide a very clear legal end-of-life definition. If it absolutely cannot be recycled, it has to be sent off to waste-to-energy plants, used in cement kilns, or utilized in road construction. Okay, but a true strategic analysis requires us to look past the ambitious text and expose the actual bugs in this newly upgraded system. What are the limitations here? Let's initiate a bit of a stress test. So, a crucial point of failure in these new rules is the carry-forward provision. The intent here was decent, give businesses some flexibility. If a company misses its 2025 to 2026 target, they aren't penalized immediately. They can actually carry that unfulfilled target forward for 3 subsequent years, as long as they clear 1/3 of the deficit annually. But the reality, this significantly dilutes the pressure for immediate year-on-year action and pushes real environmental outcomes all the way out to 2028 or 2029. And this gap brings up a massive reality check. By 2024 to 25, paper targets demanded 100% collection of plastic waste. But on the ground, the actual achievement hovered barely between 50 to 60%. This right here exposes severe enforcement gaps and a really alarming lack of credible, verified public data systems. We are essentially relying heavily on corporate self-declarations, which is a big risk. Just look at this staggering number, 6 lakh. That is the number of fake certificates already discovered within the tradable certificate mechanism. The system is supposed to allow companies who miss their targets to buy credits from those who exceed them. But discovering 600,000 fake certificates proves a terrifying vulnerability. It means companies can meet their environmental targets purely through paper manipulation, rather than doing any actual real-world cleanup. Compounding all of these loopholes is a really harsh economic truth: the underlying material challenge itself. Plastic is just incredibly cheap, flexible, and efficient to produce. But those exact same qualities make its collection, segregation, and processing incredibly difficult and wildly expensive. Right now, the financial incentives to cheat the system are honestly stronger than the incentives to actually recycle the material. All right, let's synthesize this analysis. We've seen the ambition, and we've definitely seen the massive vulnerabilities. Here are the high-yield anchors you need for your conceptual mastery of the 2026 rules. Make sure you lock these in. First, the entire system is built to shift India toward a circular economy. Second, the primary tools doing this are the escalating recycle content targets, jumping from 30% to 60% for rigid plastics. Third, enforcement relies heavily on a new digital QR backbone. Fourth, the whole process demands mandatory 4-stream segregation at the citizen level. And finally, the critical vulnerabilities you absolutely must remember are the paper-only compliance risks, specifically those fake certificates, and the 3-year carry-forward loophole that delays actual action. As India deploys these ambitious yet totally necessary upgrades to combat an invisible but deadly crisis, I have to leave you with this final critical question. Will the built-in loopholes for corporate flexibility ultimately undermine the very circular economy this policy aims to build? Understanding the rules on paper is just step 1. Tracking their real-world enforcement is where the true story lies. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.